Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to my channel. Get yourself comfortable and prepare for some interesting stories. One of them is a story about an OP's aunt who yelled at her for drinking because OP has to babysit aunt's kids. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you will enjoy it. I think every female family member who is the youngest of the adult generation, or at least a teen, can relate to this. Yesterday, we had kind of a big family function at my grand's 80th birthday. My mother's younger sister is there with her kids, preschool and elementary ages. Like every single time, I was expected to watch the little demons while her mother can have some adult time. Don't get me wrong, I like them, but in small doses, and I can't understand why me since her freaking husband was there. Since the weather is nice, it was a barbecue in my grand's garden, or backyard as the Americans will like to say. It was good. I saw some cousins of my generation, some of them I haven't seen in years. So since I had Saturday off work, I work in healthcare, I shared a beer with my cousins and we caught up. Well, then my aunt came to me and asked why I dared to drink since I have to watch over her kids today since she needs some adult time. I just asked her what's up with her husband and she gave me the whole sad story of he worked all week. Huh, I did too. Even made overtime in the nursing home I'm working in. And that's his day off. Again, mine too. And that he is on the grill. He's literally standing next to my uncle who's actually grilling and sips beer. So I looked her dead in the eye and I chugged the entire beer that I had just opened. Looked her dead in the eye while my brother, the saint he is, took the empty bottle out of my hand and gave me a new one. She left in a huff and of course she told my mother and my gran. And of course my mom was upset with me because she's my aunt and yada yada yada. The only ones on my side were my brother and my stepdad, who nearly pissed himself laughing when he heard what I did. I would have told her, I'm sorry, I already worked over 40 hours at my real job. If you expect me to babysit, I expect 48-hour prior notice, and my going rate is double your hourly rate per hour per child. Are you willing to pay that in cash today? No? Then you'll have to watch your own children while I relax with the rest of the adults. And make sure you have witnesses to this conversation so she can't say she'll pay and then renege. I'm 20 and this happened when I was 14. I have a brother that's about 6 years younger than me, and he was extra coddled by my parents for having been diagnosed with high-functioning autism when he was 4. But other than that, he seems very normal. Just unbelievably spoiled. And he used to get his way a lot. And by a lot, I mean nearly all the time. Anything I had, he also had to have. So that meant we had doubles of almost everything that wasn't shared items. And anything he had that I didn't, he'd rub in my face any way he could. When I was 11, I begged my parents for a 3DS for my 12th birthday. I got one, but then was told to lend it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else I'd have it taken away, which it was. A lot. When my aunt found out after seeing my parents forcibly take my 3DS out of my hands to give to my brother on one of her visits, she let loose on them for such blatant favoritism. They returned my 3DS immediately, then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left. But they didn't make me give it back to my brother again. Instead, my parents went out a few days later and bought another 3DS as a surprise gift for my brother. On several of mine and other people's birthdays, my brother made a huge fuss because the party wasn't all about him, even going so far as to outright state that he was upset because he wasn't getting any gifts or getting to blow out the candles on the cake. My parents learned the hard way that they couldn't enable my brother the way they'd have liked all those parties, and were actually kicked out of a few for trying. And because of that, other kids at his school stopped inviting him to birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days I had that I got to have about me because otherwise my parents forced my life to revolve around my little brother. And the year prior to when this story took place, my parents ended up paying more attention to him the entire time of my 13th birthday, and even asked me if I'd let my brother blow out the candles for me because he was upset and pouting. I refused that because I wanted to blow out my own candles. They called me a spoiled brat at first, till my aunt intervened and chastised them on their favoritism yet again, and stated how much she had noticed how my brother gets nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents got no support from anyone else there other than my brother, who was still crying because he wasn't getting to blow out my candles. And because he didn't get his way, he tried to outright spit on my cake out of spite. But my awesome aunt thankfully blocked him before he got the chance, then scolded him till he ran to my mom in tears. My parents took a lot of heat from the other adults there, then promised to never ask me to let my brother blow out my candles again. But they pretty much just went through the motions for the rest of the party. My aunt pretty much took over coordinating everything from that point. The following year, a couple weeks before my birthday party, my parents sat me down and told me they were gonna get me some gifts and a small cake, but my birthday party was effectively canceled to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off without a care. So at school over the next week, I told my friends, my teachers, and even my school counselor. All of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me, and all this got back to my parents through social media. My parents ended up grounding and gaslighting me for telling so many people, but that didn't stop me from still telling everyone at school that I was grounded for just being upset my birthday was canceled for no good reason. I guess that made it a lot worse because several of my parents' own friends, along with parents to other kids in my school, called them up or sent them Facebook messages basically saying, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And suddenly I was ungrounded. My dad just walked into my room with his arms crossed, told me my grounding was over early, then walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still canceled because nobody said anything about it, and my brother thought it was hilarious and rubbed it in my face that I wasn't going to get to celebrate. But by the end of the 2 weeks, my parents held a surprise party for me at my favorite restaurant, and then started claiming that that was their intent all along. I knew it wasn't. From what I'd seen, everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did, and it showed with any interactions family members had with my parents. So they ended up doing the surprise party to try and save what little of their reputations they had left. But I'm pretty sure they had to pay through their nose that day to just accommodate me. I got dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant that had a small arcade, and even got the PS4 game system I'd been jonesing for at the time. I could tell it was all pretty much planned and bought last minute because my dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. My brother, of course, made a huge fuss that I got that surprise party. But with so many of my friends and their parents there, my mom and dad finally put their feet down on my brother to stop his tantrum when he wanted to push my cake off the table. My brother ended up getting a timeout for the first time since he was a toddler, and my mom had to stay with him to make sure he didn't do anything crazy. And he did try several times to run to the cake or the stack of presents. Who knows what he would have done were it not for the fact that at least one adult was always on guard. Even my dad stood guard to keep him away. My mom ended up having to remove my brother and herself from the party entirely and took my little brother to McDonald's nearby so he could have some fun in their play area. And I heard later she spent at least an hour trying to get him to come out of the play-place tube structure. And he only did so because he had to use the bathroom, then tried to run right back in again. My parents never tried to cancel my birthday again while I still lived with them, though they never tried again as hard or spent as much. For the remaining 4 years I was under their roof, my birthday parties consisted of a local pizza parlor, a cake without even my name written on it, and never again anything as expensive as a new gaming system. I don't mean to sound spoiled, but I was a bit disappointed I never got a cake with my name on it again. My aunt called my parents out on that each year, and each year they claimed they forgot to get the cake decorated. I'm pretty sure that the reason my name was never written on another cake was because my brother always refused to eat pieces of cake that had writing of someone else's name on it at any party. And they couldn't put his name on any of my cakes, or it would have looked very bad for them. But the fact that I still got a day that was just about me at all, and not my brother, was still fantastic in my book, especially because just about everything else revolved around him. During each of my remaining birthday parties while still living at home, my brother made a fuss, and my mom took him somewhere else to calm him down. I was still required to share my PS4 with my brother, but it was still mine, and I took it with me when I moved out at 18. Little brother did not like that and had a huge fit till my parents went out and bought another PS4 for him. When I moved out, they finally had to deal with how they'd raised my brother so spoiled because I wasn't there to help them with him anymore. On his recent 14th birthday, he went mental on our parents for not getting him a PS5. He is now currently grounded for I don't know how long after causing hundreds or maybe even thousands in collateral damage during his rampage. He picked up a chair and just started destroying anything that was in front of him with it. And my parents just looked mentally checked out when I saw them last. My aunt has also told me they confided in her that they wish they could send my brother to military or boarding school in the future because they can't handle the monster they created anymore. Geez, and I thought I had it bad with birthdays. I'm sorry you had to go through all of that. I hope things have gotten better for you since and that your brother can get some of the help needed. Handling autistic kids can be pretty rough if my parents have anything to say about it, but hopefully someone can at least recommend a book or a specialist to your parents to try help them sort things out with him before it's too late. I'm glad you at least had others that had your back through all this. So this just happened and I'm pretty bent about it. I went to California Fish and Grill, CFG, for a late lunch. It was a pretty standard ordeal. I ordered my meal, grabbed a drink, made sure to grab a small table with only 2 seats so I wouldn't take up too much space. Not that it really mattered because the restaurant was fairly empty with plenty of tables. As I'm casually sitting at this small table for 2, an older lady came up and asked me to move. I was a bit puzzled because she came in after me. The table I was at appeared to be untaken, and there were plenty of other tables. I asked why, and she said she wanted a table big enough for her and her son. At this point, I told her I wasn't going to inconvenience myself when there were plenty of other open tables. She could simply go sit elsewhere with her son. So she started getting frustrated with me and telling me I needed to respect my elders and that her son would not be able to sit at another table. I just ignored her though because it was not my problem. So this lady walks off and tells the manager that I took her table and was refusing to give it back to her. She brings the manager over and explained that her son is very upset that I took their table, and it was hurting his feelings. We had a few minutes of back and forth before the manager gives me this look of, I don't make enough money to deal with this. Please, just move. So, whatever. I get up, go to another table, and this lady just glares at me. I glare back, and she's sitting all by herself. At first I thought she was just a liar and didn't have a son. Maybe she just wanted to abuse what little power she had. After like 10 minutes though, this guy walks in with a full suit and tie, maybe 40 to 50 years old, and approaches this lady and calls her mom. They exchange some words and he starts glaring at me too. At this point, I'm just annoyed and trying to eat my lunch in peace. So her son, a grown man, shouts at me across the restaurant and asks if I think it's funny to disrespect his mom like that. And I just looked at him puzzled because I have no idea what he's talking about. He shouts again, "Yeah, you in the hat." So I just ignore him because this is stupid. As he continued to harass me, I decided just to flip him the bird. This lady and her son lost their crap. Got up, yelling, screaming, and generally causing a scene. The son started threatening to kick my butt. He asked if I liked being such a smart butt. So of course I had to let him know it was better than being an idiot. Anyway, this commotion resulted in the police being called by the manager. They showed up after an unclear amount of time, walk right up to this lady and her son, and ask them to leave. The lady starts going off about how I stole her table, was harassing her, and how started it. Now this poor police officer looks down at me, casually sitting at my table, eating my salmon, and tells this ancient woman that I don't seem to be bothering anyone. So the lady signals out the manager, hoping they will corroborate her story. And the manager explains in great detail that this woman had come in and started harassing me. She asked the woman and her son to leave, and they both refused because they paid for their food and they said they had a right to sit at any table for as long as they wanted. After refusing to leave, this hag of a woman and her son were cuffed and escorted away. I made sure to move to her table as she left, just to rub salt in the wound. Probably arrested for trespassing. I'm sure the cops asked the manager if they wanted them to trespass because they weren't leaving willingly. A lot of these entitled folks don't understand what it means to be a private business. They can refuse anyone's patronage for being a disturbance. I work at a zoo, and we're mostly closed for the winter. But our reptile house is still open because it's kept at the same temperature year-round. I'm working, showing people what the different animals are, answering their questions, when a family, 2 parents, 1 kid, comes in. They're mostly chill, doing what all visitors do, when I hear the kid wants to hold the green mamba. Normally, we let kids hold some of the reptiles if they're non-venomous and non-aggressive. Green mambas are venomous, and this one in particular gets really aggressive when near people. The parents come and ask me if their kid can hold it. I tell them he can't for the above reasons, and they tell him. This is when he throws a massive fit. Apparently his favorite color is green, and he only wanted to hold that snake. We had other green snakes, and thinking back, I should have just got a different snake and told him it was a green mamba to avoid the bull crap, but I didn't think of that at the time. They came back to me to ask again, and I firmly say no. Then they got really upset and loud about how I was a terrible zookeeper and should just let their kid hold the snake. My manager hears the commotion, and so did every other guest, and comes over to see what's wrong. They tell him that I'm not letting their kid hold a snake when we let kids hold snakes all the time. There is really only 5 snakes that we let people hold, mostly because most snakes don't like being held. So my manager then tells them to follow him, and he will let him hold a snake. They stop him to bring him to the green mamba and say it has to be this one. He tells them what I told them, and that they can't let guests hold venomous snakes. And they yell at him as well. Now my manager doesn't have a lot of patience, so he just tells them to get out or he's gonna call security to force them out. They promptly left, but not before calling us child-hating idiot. Make up a form that they will need to sign that basically legally says yes, I want my child to handle this venomous snake, and if it bites the child and the child dies, the zoo has no responsibility for paying any expenses or burial fees, since obviously the parents are as dumb as a box of rocks. Well guys, that's it for today. If you end up enjoying this video, please consider subscribing. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm going to link it right here. The story is about an OP who got handcuffed because of an entitled mother, but OP convinced cops to check the footage. Check this out if you haven't, and I'll see you in my next video.